"Please, don't hurt me," whispered the Apache woman to the lone rancher who rescued her from the river. The river was louder than usual that evening. Heavy rain had fallen in the hills all day, and now the water rushed fast and wild, carrying broken branches, mud, and stones with it. The sky was turning dark, and the wind moved through the tall grass like a warning. Most people stayed far from the river at times like this, but the rancher was already outside, finishing his work before night came. He lived alone on a small piece of land not far from the riverbank. His cabin was simple, built with his own hands years ago. Life had taught him to depend on himself. He had chosen this lonely place because it was quiet, because it asked nothing from him except work and patience. He did not expect visitors. He never did. As he tied the gate and turned toward the cabin, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a log trapped between rocks near the edge of the water. The river often left things behind after a storm, but then the shape moved. It was slow, weak, almost unnoticeable, but it was movement. He stopped walking. The rancher stood still, listening to the river and watching the dark shape near the rocks. The wind pushed his coat against his body and the cold reached his skin. Something felt wrong. He took a few careful steps closer to the water, his boots sinking into wet soil. Then he saw her. A woman lay half in the water, half against the rocks. Her dark hair was tangled and heavy with mud. Her clothes were torn and soaked through. One arm was caught between stones, and the river pulled at her legs like it was trying to take her back. She was barely moving. For a moment the rancher froze, his mind filled with warnings. People like her were not welcomed by people like him. The land carried old anger, old fear, old blood. Helping her could bring trouble. Ignoring her would keep his life simple. But then she coughed. The sound was weak, almost lost in the roar of the river, but it was human. She was alive. Without thinking any further, he moved. He climbed down carefully, testing each step, feeling the cold water rush around his boots. The current was strong, stronger than he expected, and it pulled at him too. He grabbed a nearby branch and used it to keep his balance as he reached for her. When his hand touched her shoulder, her body reacted instantly. She flinched hard, as if burned. Her eyes opened wide with terror. They were dark and filled with fear so deep it hurt to see. She tried to pull away, but she was too weak. "No," she whispered. Her voice shook, thin and broken. "Please don't hurt me." The words came out slowly, like they cost her great effort. Her voice carried pain, fear, and a lifetime of learning to expect the worst. The rancher felt something tighten in his chest. "I won't," he said quickly, though he was not sure she understood his words. He kept his voice low, calm. "I'm not going to hurt you." She did not relax. Her breathing was fast and uneven. Her eyes stayed locked on his face, watching every small movement. She was ready for pain, ready for cruelty, ready for whatever she believed would come next. He carefully freed her arm from the rocks. Blood stained the water around them, but not badly. Most of her injuries looked like they came from exhaustion and the river itself. Still, she was weak, shaking, barely able to stay conscious. The river surged again, nearly knocking them both over. The rancher realized they could not stay there. He lifted her gently, supporting her weight against his chest. She was light, far lighter than she should have been, like hunger and fear had slowly taken pieces of her away. As he carried her toward the shore, she tried to push against him, but her strength was gone. "Please," she whispered again, tears mixing with river water on her face. "Please." "I've got you," he said, not knowing if she understood the words, only hoping she understood the tone. When they reached dry ground, he wrapped his coat around her shoulders to protect her from the cold. She stiffened at first, then slowly stopped resisting. Her head fell forward and her body grew heavy in his arms. For a long moment he stood there holding her, listening to the river and his own heartbeat. He knew this moment would change everything. Bringing her to his cabin meant risk. Leaving her meant certain death. He turned toward home. The walk back felt longer than usual. The sky darkened quickly and the wind cut through the trees. Every few steps he checked her breathing, afraid she might stop. She stirred once, opening her eyes just enough to see where she was. She looked at him again, fear returning. "No soldiers," she whispered. The rancher shook his head gently. "Just me." She studied his face as if trying to decide whether to believe him. Slowly, her eyes closed again. When they reached the cabin, he opened the door with his shoulder and carried her inside. The warmth from the small fire he had left earlier filled the room. He laid her down carefully on the bed, placing clean blankets over her. She woke again when he stepped back. "Please," she said one more time, her voice barely audible. "Don't hurt me." The rancher met her eyes and answered honestly. "I won't. You're safe here." She did not fully believe him, not yet, but her body was too tired to fight anymore. Her eyes closed and sleep claimed her, though her face remained tense, as if even rest did not come easily. The rancher sat nearby, watching the fire crackle. His mind raced with thoughts he had tried to leave behind years ago. The world outside his cabin was full of division and cruelty, and now it had entered his quiet life through a river swollen with rain. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. All he knew was that she had whispered fear instead of anger, and that he had chosen to listen. Outside, the river kept flowing, unaware that it had delivered two strangers into a shared fate neither had planned. Morning arrived slowly, carried in by pale light slipping through the small window. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the world quiet and heavy, as if everything was holding its breath. The rancher woke early, as he always did, but this morning felt different. The sound of another person breathing filled the cabin, soft and uneven. He sat up and looked toward the bed. The woman was still there. She lay curled slightly on her side, wrapped in thick blankets. Her face was calmer than the night before, but her body remained tense, as if she expected danger even in sleep. The rancher watched her for a moment, unsure of what to do next. He had rescued her without thinking, but now reality pressed in. Keeping her here meant responsibility, risk, and change. He moved quietly, careful not to wake her, and added more wood to the fire. The cabin warmed slowly. He poured water into a pot and set it to heat. Simple actions helped calm his thoughts. Work always did. When he turned back, her eyes were open. She did not move, did not speak. She simply stared at him, fear rising instantly, sharp and alert. Her hand tightened around the blanket as if it were the only thing protecting her. He stopped moving. "It's morning," he said softly. "You're still safe." She did not answer. Her eyes flicked around the room, taking in the walls, the table, the fire, the door. A small, frightened sound escaped her throat when she realized she was inside a stranger's home. She tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Easy," he said, stepping back to give her space. "You were hurt." She froze at his voice. He noticed how she studied his hands, his posture, his distance. Everything about her spoke of caution learned the hard way. "Water," he said, pointing gently to the cup he had placed nearby. "For you." She hesitated, then slowly reached for it. Her fingers trembled as she drank. She did not take her eyes off him the entire time. When she finished, she whispered, "Why?" He understood the question even without many words. "Because you were drowning," he answered. "Anyone would help." Her lips pressed together. She clearly did not believe that. In her world, help did not come without cost. Silence settled between them. It was thick, uncomfortable, filled with unspoken thoughts. The rancher sat on a chair near the wall, keeping distance as he had all night. He wanted her to know she was not trapped. After a while, she spoke again. "You alone?" "Yes," he said. "I live here alone." That answer seemed to surprise her. She studied him more closely now. His face showed no anger, no hunger for control, only tiredness and something else she could not name. She pulled the blanket closer. "No soldiers. No. No men coming. No." Her shoulders relaxed just a little. Still, fear remained. It lived deep inside her, not something that could leave quickly. She had learned to survive by expecting harm. Trust was dangerous. The rancher stood and moved toward the table. He cut some bread and set it on a plate. He placed it close enough for her to reach, but far enough that she did not feel crowded. "Eat," he said. "You need strength." She looked at the food as if it might disappear or turn against her. Slowly, she broke off a small piece and tasted it. When nothing bad happened, she ate a little more. As she ate, memories pressed against her mind, running through dry land, hiding, the sound of water growing louder, slipping, falling, cold pulling her down. She swallowed hard and forced the memories away. The rancher watched quietly. He did not ask questions. He understood that questions could feel like pressure. After she finished eating, exhaustion returned. Her body still carried the weight of fear and hunger and pain. She lay back down, eyes open, watching the ceiling. He left her alone and stepped outside. The land looked washed clean after the storm. The river had calmed, though it still moved fast. The rancher stood for a long time, staring at the water, thinking about the choice he had made. He knew what people would say if they found her here. He knew the stories, the anger, the hatred that lived in the land like a shadow. He had lost family to that hatred long ago. That loss had pushed him into solitude. Now, that solitude was broken. When he returned inside, she was asleep again. The day passed slowly. He checked on her often, bringing water, adjusting the fire, making sure she was breathing steadily. Each time she woke, her eyes found him instantly, fear flaring and then fading when she saw he had not moved closer. As evening came, she spoke more. "My name," she said quietly, "is Nita," he nodded. "I'm Eli." Names changed something. They made them real to each other. "Nita," he said carefully, "you can rest here until you're strong." She looked at him, searching for truth. "You not take me?" she asked. "No, you not sell me." "No." Her eyes filled with tears she did not let fall. She turned her face away, ashamed of the weakness she felt. Survival had taught her never to cry in front of others. That night, sleep came easier for her, though fear still followed her into dreams. She woke once, startled, breathing hard. Eli was there, sitting near the fire, not touching her. "You're safe," he said again. The words were simple, repeated. Slowly they began to matter. Days passed. Each one was quiet. Nita grew stronger. She helped when she could, sweeping the floor, warming food. She moved carefully, always aware of where Eli was, always ready to retreat. Eli noticed small things. How she flinched at sudden sounds. How she never stood with her back to the door. How she thanked him for everything as if kindness was something rare. One afternoon she asked, "Why you live alone?" He thought before answering. "Too much pain with people," she nodded. She understood that language. Trust did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, in shared silence, in respect for space, in the steady proof that fear was not always right. But outside the cabin, the world had not changed, and both of them knew it would not stay quiet forever. The days began to settle into a quiet pattern, slow and careful, like footsteps on fragile ground. Each morning, the light entered the cabin gently, touching the walls and the floor before reaching the bed where Nita slept. She woke earlier now, her strength returning little by little. The fear in her eyes did not disappear, but it no longer ruled every breath she took. Eli noticed the change before she did. She moved more freely around the cabin. She no longer froze every time he stood up. She spoke more, though still in short sentences, choosing each word with care. Trust was growing, not loudly or quickly, but like a small fire that stayed alive because someone kept feeding it. One morning, Nita stepped outside on her own. Eli watched from the doorway, ready to follow if she showed fear, but she did not. She stood near the cabin, breathing in the air, her face lifted toward the sky. The land stretched wide and open, quiet except for the sound of birds and the river far away. She closed her eyes. For the first time since arriving, she felt the ground beneath her feet without fear chasing her. The air did not carry shouting. The wind did not bring danger. It felt strange, almost unreal. Eli said nothing. He understood that some moments needed silence. Later that day, she helped him prepare food. Her movements were still careful, but there was purpose in them now. She washed vegetables in a bowl of water and placed them on the table. Their hands nearly touched once and both paused. She looked at him, searching his face. He stepped back. She nodded slightly, grateful. That evening they sat near the fire. The flames moved softly, lighting the room with warmth. Outside, night settled in without threat. Eli broke the silence. "You don't have to stay," he said. "If you want to go, I'll help you." Nita stared into the fire. The thought of leaving filled her with mixed feelings. Freedom called to her, but so did fear. "I don't know where," she said quietly. He nodded. "That's all right." For a long time, neither spoke. Then she began to tell her story, not all at once, not in detail, but in pieces, like stones placed carefully on the ground. She spoke of her people, of moving across land that once felt safe but no longer was. She spoke of running, hiding, and watching loved ones disappear into smoke and noise. Her words were simple, but the pain behind them was heavy. "I lost everyone," she said softly. Eli listened without interrupting. He had learned long ago that pain did not need fixing, only witnessing. When she finished, the fire crackled loudly, filling the silence she left behind. "I know what it's like," he said at last. She turned toward him. He did not speak of names or dates. He spoke of coming home to emptiness, of a house that no longer felt alive, of choosing land and distance because people carried too many memories. "Being alone hurts less," he said. "Most days." She understood that too. As nights passed, they shared more moments like this. Not always stories, sometimes just quiet. They worked together during the day. Eli showed her how to care for the animals, how to mend simple things, how to move through the land without fighting it. Nita showed him other ways, how to listen before acting, how to feel when the land was uneasy, how to sit with silence instead of trying to fill it. Their differences no longer felt like walls. They felt like bridges. One afternoon, while gathering wood near the trees, Nita froze. Eli noticed instantly. She lifted her hand, signaling him to stop. Her eyes focused on the distance, her body alert. He followed her gaze but saw nothing. "Someone passed here," she said. "How do you know?" he asked. She pointed to the ground, a broken branch, a footprint pressed too deep. Fear returned, sharp and cold. Eli felt it too. The outside world was closer than he wanted to admit. They returned to the cabin without speaking. That night, Nita barely slept. Eli stayed awake, listening. Morning came without incident, but the feeling did not fade. Later that day, Nita sat by the window watching the land. "You should not be alone because of me," she said suddenly. Eli looked at her. "I chose this." "But danger follows me," she said. "It always does." He did not deny it. "Still," he said, "you're here now." Her eyes filled with emotion she tried to hide. That evening, she shared something else. A memory from before the running, before fear ruled her days. A memory of laughter, of songs carried by the wind, of belonging. As she spoke, Eli saw a different version of her. Not the frightened woman from the river, but someone whole, strong, alive. He realized then that she was not just surviving here. She was slowly becoming herself again. And that frightened him, because caring meant loss was possible. Days turned into weeks. Their routine deepened. Trust grew stronger. Nita began to smile, small and rare at first, then more often. Eli caught himself waiting for those moments, measuring his days by them. One afternoon, rain returned, softer this time. They stood in the doorway, watching it fall. "River saved me," Nita said quietly. "It almost took you," Eli replied. She shook her head. "It brought me here." The words stayed with him. That night, as the rain fell gently, Eli realized something else. The land no longer felt as empty. The cabin no longer echoed. Loneliness had loosened its grip, but peace was fragile. Far away, beyond the hills, the world still moved with anger and fear. And both of them knew that what they were building here existed in a narrow space between past and future. For now, they shared warmth, silence, and the fragile hope that tomorrow would look the same. Neither knew how long that hope would last. The first sign came quietly, almost too quietly to notice. Eli was repairing a fence near the edge of his land when one of the horses grew restless. The animal lifted its head, ears sharp, body tense. Animals often sense things before humans did. Eli paused and listened. The wind moved through the grass, normal and soft, but something felt different. When he returned to the cabin, Nita was standing near the doorway, her body stiff, her eyes fixed on the distance. "You feel it too," he said. She nodded slowly. "Someone is near." Fear returned to her face, not wild panic, but the kind of fear that came from experience. The kind that knew when peace was about to break. They did not speak much after that. Both of them moved carefully, quietly, listening more than talking. The land that had felt gentle now felt watchful. That night Nita barely touched her food. "They will keep coming," she said softly, "even if they don't find me today." Eli looked at her. "You don't know that." She met his eyes. "I do." She stood and began to gather the few things she had, the small cloth she carried, the worn necklace she never took off. Her movements were steady but heavy with sadness. Eli understood what she was doing. "No," he said. "You're not leaving tonight." She turned to him. "If I stay, you will be hurt." "That's my choice," he replied. She shook her head. "It should not be." Silence filled the room. The fire crackled softly between them. "I won't be the reason you suffer," she said. "You already gave me life. I won't take more." Her words cut deeper than she knew. Eli stepped closer, then stopped, careful not to frighten her. "You're not a burden." Her eyes filled with emotion. "Where I go, trouble follows." "Trouble finds everyone," he said. "Staying alone doesn't stop it." She looked away. "It stops it from hurting others." That night, sleep did not come easily to either of them. Eli stayed awake, listening to the sounds outside. Every snap of a branch tightened his muscles. Nita lay still, staring into the dark, remembering too many nights like this. Morning came with heavy clouds. Footprints appeared near the riverbank. Eli found them while checking the land. They were fresh. Human, more than one. When he returned, Nita saw his face and knew. "They are close," she said. "Yes." She exhaled slowly, as if letting go of something inside her. "Then I must go." Eli felt anger rise, not at her, but at the world that forced this choice. "You're still weak." "I am strong enough," she replied. "I always have been." She stood taller now, no longer the broken woman pulled from the river. Fear lived in her, but it did not control her. "I know paths," she said, "hidden ones. You shouldn't go alone." "I always have." He wanted to argue. He wanted to say he could protect her. But he knew the truth. The danger was not just to her now. It was to him, to his land, to everything he had tried to keep quiet and untouched. Helping her leave was the only way to keep her safe, and maybe to keep himself alive. They prepared quickly. Eli gave her food, water, a blanket, and a small knife. She accepted them with gratitude, not pride. When they stood outside the cabin, the land felt different. The air was thick with things unsaid. She looked at the door one last time. "This place gave me rest." Eli nodded. "It gave me something too." She hesitated, then stepped closer, not touching but close enough to feel warmth. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me." He swallowed hard. "You were always worth seeing." She smiled faintly, then turned away before the moment could grow heavier. They walked together toward the edge of the land, moving through trees and tall grass. Nita led the way, careful, quiet. Eli followed, memorizing every step, every sound. At a narrow path hidden between rocks, she stopped. "This is far enough," she said. Eli wanted to say more. He wanted to ask where she would go, if she would be safe, if he would ever see her again. But some questions had no answers. "If you need help," he said, "come back." She shook her head gently. "I cannot bring danger twice." Then, after a pause, she said, "But I will remember." She touched her chest lightly, then turned and disappeared into the land, moving like she belonged to it. Eli stood there long after she was gone. When he returned to the cabin, the silence felt heavier than before. Her presence lingered in small things, the extra cup, the folded cloth, the warmth she had brought without trying. That evening, voices echoed faintly in the distance. Eli stayed hidden, watching from the shadows as men passed near his land, searching, angry, impatient. They did not stop. They did not find her. Eventually they moved on. Night fell again. Eli sat by the fire alone. The loneliness returned, sharper now because he knew what it was missing. He wondered if he had done the right thing. He wondered if kindness was always followed by loss. Far away, Nita moved through the land, her steps sure, her heart heavy but steady. She carried fear, yes, but also something new. Hope. Both of them survived that day, but neither of them would ever be the same. The land felt larger once she was gone. Eli noticed it the moment he woke the next morning. The cabin was quiet in a way it had not been for weeks. No soft movement, no careful footsteps, no quiet breathing from the other side of the room. Only the sound of the wind outside and the slow crackle of dying embers in the fire. He sat up and looked at the empty space where Nita had slept. For a long time, he did not move. Life had returned to how it was before, but it no longer felt normal. The quiet that once brought him peace now felt heavy. Every small object reminded him of her. The extra cup on the shelf, the folded cloth near the bed, the place by the door where she used to pause and listen before stepping outside. Eli stood and went through his morning routine. He fed the animals. He checked the fences. He walked the edge of his land. Everything was the same, yet nothing was. Days passed. The men who had searched the area did not return. The land slowly relaxed again. Birds came back. The horses calmed. The river flowed gently as if nothing had ever happened. But Eli had changed. He found himself listening more closely to the land, noticing small signs he had once ignored. He remembered how Nita had read the ground, how she had sensed danger before it arrived. Sometimes, when the wind shifted, he thought of her walking through tall grass, moving quietly, strong and steady. At night, he sat by the fire and thought about survival. He had always believed survival meant staying alone, keeping distance, avoiding pain. But Nita had shown him something else. Survival could also mean choosing kindness, even when it led to loss. Weeks passed, then months. One afternoon, Eli found something near the riverbank. A small marking on a tree, simple, easy to miss, but he recognized it. Nita had passed through. His chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with relief. She had made it. She was still alive. He did not follow the mark. He understood its meaning. It was not a call to come. It was a message. I survived. Eli touched the rough bark and nodded once as if she could see him. Life continued. He returned to his work, but he no longer worked only to fill time. He worked with purpose. He repaired things he had once ignored. He expanded the garden. He cleared a new path toward the hills, not because he needed it, but because the land felt meant to be shared, even if no one was there now. Sometimes travelers passed nearby. Eli greeted them. He offered water. He listened. He did not retreat the way he once had. Far from the cabin, Nita also moved forward. She followed hidden paths and quiet valleys. She rested when she needed to. She trusted herself again. The fear that once ruled her steps still lived inside her, but it no longer decided everything. She found her people eventually. Not all of them, not as many as she had lost, but enough to remind her who she was. She told no one about the rancher in detail. Some stories were too precious to share freely, but she carried the memory with her, a quiet truth that kindness could exist in unexpected places. Years passed. The land changed. Seasons turned. The river rose and fell again and again. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Eli stood by the riverbank, watching the water move slowly past the rocks. It was calm, nothing like the night it had brought Nita into his life. He thought about that moment often. He wondered what would have happened if he had walked away, if he had chosen safety over humanity. The thought still unsettled him. He did not regret his choice. As he turned to head back to the cabin, he noticed something on the far side of the river, a figure standing still, watching the water. His heart skipped. The figure did not move closer, did not wave, did not speak. Eli stood where he was. After a long moment, the figure lifted a hand slightly, a simple gesture, quiet and brief. Then the figure turned and disappeared into the land. Eli did not follow. He smiled softly, a feeling of peace settling in his chest. Not everything needed to return. Some things only needed to be known. That night he slept easily. Far away, Nita looked back one last time before continuing on her path. The land had given her pain, but it had also given her mercy. She carried both with her, balanced at last. The river flowed on, unaware of the lives it had touched, unaware that it had once been a bridge between two broken people who found strength in choosing kindness. They did not build a life together. They did not promise forever, but they survived. And sometimes, that was the most powerful ending of all.